No one really thinks about it, but behind every sword swing, behind every scream soaked in blood and every cheer roaring from the amphitheater, there was something so human, so raw, and so forgotten. Hunger. Not metaphorical hunger, not glory or vengeance, but real hunger. The kind that growls in your gut, that makes you salivate at the sight of a crust of bread, that aches as much as a wound, because a gladiator, no matter how feared or deadly he was, still had to eat, and eat a lot, but not how you'd expect. Forget the image of a Roman feast, with grapes, expensive wine, and exotic meats. A gladiator wasn't a senator. He wasn't a noble. He was a beast, trained, fed, and shaped. Every bite he swallowed had a purpose. Every sip had a function. His body was a weapon, and his diet was the steel that sharpened it. You want to know what a Roman gladiator ate in a single day? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't glamorous, but it's brutally real. Imagine waking up in a stone cell, your skin still sticky with last night's sweat. Echoes of the previous day's screams still bouncing off the walls. The sun hasn't fully risen, but your day has already begun, and with it, the need for fuel. The first thing a gladiator receives upon waking isn't coffee or toast. It's a handful of boiled barley mixed with lukewarm water. Yes, barley, not wheat. Barley was cheaper, tougher, and digested more slowly. It was slow-burning fuel, the foundation of everything they ate. Some called it ox food. But that wasn't an insult. Oxen were strong, resilient, relentless, exactly what you had to be. That first breakfast barely settled the emptiness, but it wasn't enough to feed the muscles that tore themselves apart in training every day. So not long after, during the early drills, came a second breakfast, a thicker porridge, made from barley again, but now mixed with boiled legumes, especially fava beans and lentils. Fava beans were almost sacred to gladiators, packed with protein, cheap, abundant in, tough, like their lives. And here's the kicker. Gladiators ate very little meat, surprised. You're not alone. Most people imagine them gorging on red meat to stay strong, but no, in fact, many historians have nicknamed them barley men or even Roman vegans. And that's not a modern joke. It's archaeological truth. Their bones, examined centuries later, revealed diets extremely high in plants, grains, and legumes. It was cheap, easy to store, and did the job. Kept them big and heavy. Because that was the secret. They didn't want gladiators to be ripped. They wanted mass, bulk. A heavier fighter could take more blows. He had a layer of fat that helped protect him from superficial cuts. That's why their food was so dense, so calorie-rich, so repetitive. Mid-morning, if training had been especially intense, they were given a small piece of bread. Not white bread, of course, black bread. Made from barley or spelt, often hardened. It had to be soaked in water, vinegar, or what you'd now call vegetable broth. Just enough so it didn't break a tooth. Alongside it sometimes came a piece of cheese. A strong, fermented, simple cheese. No delicacies here. And now, something almost no one knows. One of the most common supplements gladiators took was a mixture of plant ash and vinegar. Disgusting? Absolutely useful. Incredibly, this mix replenished lost minerals. It replaced calcium lost during brutal sparring. It strengthened bones. It was their ancient protein shake, their post-workout supplement. With no chocolate flavor, when the sun reached its highest point, it was time for the main meal of the day, lunch. And this is where you could really see the system at work, because it wasn't about pleasure, it was about strategy. A gladiator's lunch often included more boiled barley, this time accompanied by mashed legumes, a bit of olive oil, aromatic herbs like thyme or garlic, and, if luck smiled on him, some dried fish or liver. Liver was gold. Not for the taste, but for the iron. It helped fight anemia, accelerated muscle recovery, and kept them alive one more day. And in their world, that's all that mattered. Olive oil was key too, high in calories. It helped sustain energy throughout training and combat. Some even used it on their skin, not just to protect it, but to make their muscles shine during a fight. Because in the arena, your image was a weapon too. In the afternoon, before final training sessions or exhibition matches for visitors, they got a light snack, something quick but energetic. Again, bread or porridge, sometimes dried fruit like figs or dates, something easy to digest but rich in quick energy. And finally, dinner. This varied depending on the type of gladiator, the time of year, even their performance. But in general, dinner was similar to lunch, just smaller to lunch. Boiled barley, legumes, and if they were lucky, a hard-boiled egg or some extra cheese. They were never fully satisfied, and that wasn't due to scarcity. It was control, because a gladiator who overate was slow, and one who ate too little died. It was a razor-sharp balance, designed not for happiness, but survival. Now tell me, how many times have you pictured a gladiator chewing silently, sweaty, holding a bowl of porridge with his eyes fixed on nothing? Probably never, because Rome sold you the image of spectacle, not the waiting. It showed you the blood, but not the sweat. It taught you about death, but never the hunger, if you've made it this far. Drop the word porridge in the comments, because that, more than anything else, is what a Roman gladiator truly ate. Not swords, not meat, not glory. Porridge, but food wasn't everything. Behind every bowl, there was a strategy, and behind every strategy, an industry. Because gladiators weren't just slaves with swords, they were investments, assets, breathing, bleeding commodities, owned by training schools known as ludi. These warriors were managed like war horses, and every bite they took was tracked like gold. The lanistae, the owners of these schools, knew exactly how much a gladiator should weigh, not based on health, based on purpose. Because there were different types of fighters. Some were fast and nimble, like the retiari, armed only with a net and trident, their bodies lean and quick. Others, like the murmelos, were built like walking fortresses, heavy, armored, slow, unstoppable, and each of these types demanded a different meal plan. The retiarius ate for agility, lighter meals, less density, nothing that would slow him down. The murmelo, though, he was fattened up like a prize bull. More porridge, more bread, more fat, because in the arena, taking a hit was inevitable. The question wasn't if, but how much you could take before falling. A thicker body, a meat shield wrapped in fat and muscle, meant survival that wasn't an accident, that was science. And here's the wildest part. Some schools tracked their gladiators' urine and feces, not out of disgust, but precision, because a bloated body meant poor absorption, and a dead gladiator from bad digestion wasn't a warrior. It was a financial loss. Every calorie, every bowel movement, every hiccup mattered. Training wasn't just about strength. It was about wringing every drop of value out of every grain you swallowed, every bean, every drop of oil. And if you didn't perform, you ate less. Food wasn't just fuel. It was punishment and reward. It was your daily judgment. Now picture this. Vinegar. Just vinegar. Something you probably have sitting in your kitchen, forgotten. But to a gladiator, vinegar was everything. Mixed with water, it became pasca, a drink of soldiers and slaves. It refreshed, killed off bacteria in contaminated water, and tricked the gut. A stomach full of watered-down vinegar believed it was fed. It kept you going barely in the days before a big fight. The diet changed again. Rations increased. Training intensity dropped. Fat intake doubled. Why? Because a slightly heavier body meant more shock absorption. Some fighters were even rubbed in fat or oil before a match, not just for shine, But to prevent wounds, swords slid, cuts were shallow, skin resisted. Every spoon of oil, every bit of ash, every extra bean, they were layers of armor before the real armor. And don't forget, fame fed you, literally. The more popular you were, the better you ate. If you were a crowd favorite, a rising star, your meals were larger, richer, cleaner, not out of kindness, out of cold, hard economics. A famous gladiator brought in money from bets, from sponsorship, from whispered rumors. Feeding you well wasn't generosity, it was insurance. There was a food circus behind the blood circus. You didn't see it, you didn't hear about it, but it was there, just as brutal. Now here's something no history book ever tells you. Emotional hunger. Food wasn't just about rebuilding muscle. It was often the only moment of peace. The only time a gladiator could sit, breathe, and not think about dying. A bowl of barley wasn't just a meal, it was proof. You made it through another day. Some fighters ate in silence. Others murmured prayers. A few cried while they chewed, not from sadness, but from fear. Because every meal might be their last, they didn't know it with their minds. They knew it in their bones, in their twitching hands, in the tension that never left their jaws. Still, they ate, because hunger doesn't wait. And because the system didn't care. It's strange, isn't it? How something so simple as a meal can hold so much power. But in Rome, everything had two blades, even bread. Now imagine this. You're there, sitting among them, a guest inside a gladiator school. They place a bowl before you. Barley, boiled fava beans, a splash of olive oil, a crust of hard bread, and a cup of pasca. That's it. That's the meal. Around you are men, scarred and marked. Some fresh wounds, some faded, all staring at the same door, the one they'll walk through next time. To fight, would you eat it? Could you swallow, knowing every bite pushes you closer to death? Still, they ate, because not eating was dying too. And where was the luxury? The grapes, the fresh figs, the sweet wine? Elsewhere for others, for the senators in their cushioned seats, for the crowds in white togas, for the ones who didn't bleed. The gladiator ate for strength, not for pleasure. Food was his silent training, his daily test, his final weapon on match days. Many gladiators fasted, not for faith, for survival. Fighting on a full stomach meant vomiting, dizziness, death the night before the fight. Dinner was minimal. Bread, pasca, maybe some cheese, and a prayer, not to the gods, to luck. And if you survived the fight, if the crowd didn't call for your death, your body demanded everything it had lost. Then yes, food arrived, fresh bread, dried fruit, sometimes meat, more oil, watered wine. But it wasn't a feast. It was repair, eating with broken ribs, with a stitched lip, with your arm in a sling, eating, and being thankful for surviving. Many vomited before the first bite. Shock. Others couldn't eat for hours. Their bodies too wired, too traumatized. But eventually, they all ate, because if they didn't, the system would eat them. The life of a gladiator didn't come with champion breakfasts, no dessert, no applause over dinner. Just porridge, black bread, beans, oil, ash. That's what a gladiator ate in 24 hours. And now that you know, ask yourself this: how much strength does it take to face a lion? And how much more to wake up each morning, stare into a bowl of lukewarm porridge, and keep fighting? Being a gladiator wasn't just about swinging swords and surviving the arena. It was about eating each day with clenched teeth and a clenched heart. It was about chewing not just barley and beans, but fear, about swallowing shame, swallowing the pain of a broken rib, a lost friend, a stolen life. It was about turning food into fuel, not for glory, but for survival. History painted them as icons. We imagine them tall, carved like statues, drenched in honor. But they weren't gods. They weren't even heroes. They were men. Men who woke up with nightmares still in their eyes. Men who chewed in silence, remembering the last scream they heard before lights went out. Men who didn't eat for joy, but because not eating meant dying sooner. And the most brutal truth, some of them chose it. That's right. Some were volunteers, not because they craved violence, but because outside the arena, hunger was worse. The emptiness of the belly was more dangerous than any sword. In an empire where millions starved, where bread could cost a day's wage, gladiator schools looked like a lifeline if you fought. You ate if you won. You lived one more day. And in that world, that was everything. You may think this is ancient history, that it has nothing to do with you, that those wounds, that pain, that hunger, are long gone, but you'd be wrong, because even now, millions fight the same fight. Not with tridents or swords, but with hunger, with poverty, with silence, with systems that chew them up and spit them out. And that's the real lesson here, behind the myth of the gladiator, behind the sweat, the steel, and the sand. There's barley, oil, ash, fear. There's a story not of blood, but of resistance, because every bite they took was an act of rebellion. A statement, I'm still here. Eating wasn't pleasure. It was war. Va, against pain, against weakness, against death. And that war, it was fought 3 times a day, every single day. No applause, no armor, just a bowl. And the will to survive. So the next time someone says gladiator, don't picture the screaming crowds. Don't picture the kill. Picture the man in the shadows, his body bruised, his breath heavy, chewing a piece of black bread with a stare that says, I don't know if I'll live tomorrow, but I'll eat today. And still, they ate, because that was the only thing they could control. If this resonated with you, if just for a moment you saw that man, felt that bowl in your hands, leave a word in the comments. The word is resilience, because that was, more than anything else, is what a Roman gladiator ate every day. Not just food, not just porridge, but resilience. He chewed fear. He swallowed his past. He digested the weight of his own death, one bite at a time. And if you've made it this far, you're part of that legacy, not just someone who listens to history, but someone who feels it. Thank you for staying until the end, for hearing what others ignore, for not just watching the show, but for seeing the man behind it. Subscribe if you want to keep discovering the things empires tried to bury, because what's coming next is going to shake you. Here at Empires Uncovered, we don't sugarcoat the past, we bite it raw.